Hey everyone, Matt here from Dr. Renee. Today we're going to do a comparison review of the New Balance 860 version 14 and the New Balance Vongo version 6. So these are both stability shoes within the New Balance line that have changed quite a bit from their prior versions. Both of them obviously are two of the primary stability shoes within the New Balance Fresh Foam lineup, but how they're doing that is different, both from last year's version as well as different from how a lot of shoes on the market are doing stability. So it makes these two very unique. Now, the purpose of this is if you're even interested in a stability shoe and you're interested in a New Balance shoe, I want to help you decide, again, which one of these might work better for you, if at all. So let's start off with specs first. Men's size 10 for both these. The Vongo version 6 is coming in at 11.2 ounces for my size 10, or about 316 grams. The 860 version 14 is coming in at 11 ounces, or about 310 grams, a little bit lighter. Stack height, the 860 is the taller of the two, coming in at 38 millimeters in the heel, 30 in the forefoot, while the Vongo is just a tiny bit lower, but still on the fairly tall end, with 35 and a half in the heel and 29 and a half for a forefoot for a 6 millimeter drop. So 8 over in the 860, 6 millimeter drop over in the Vongo. Now, in terms of rides, there are some similarities, but how they're executed makes them feel quite different on foot. If we're talking about ride, the 860, in my opinion, is a little bit smoother because you can see there's this really nice posterior lateral heel bevel that's a little bit more gradual than the Vongo. The Vongo still has a heel bevel, so it's got a decent heel transition, but I found the Vongo works a little bit better at walking speeds, and the 860 works better at both walking and running. Now, as soon as you transition onto these shoes, they are both really soft. They're not mushy soft, which is great about the Fresh Foam X material, but they're definitely on the softer end. Neither one of these are going to be good shoes if you want to run faster. These are great shoes if you want to do slower, easy mileage. People that run slower paces may feel like these are great shoes if you need stability for maybe marathon distance, but most people are not going to find these as racers. These are daily trainers and maybe long run shoes if you just need a little bit more cushion. The 860 is the one that's just a little bit more cushion. That makes sense because there's a little bit more stack height. The Vongo is still well cushioned. It's just a little bit less so. So if you don't want as much cushioning, the Vongo might be a little bit better. If you want a little bit more, the 860 might be a little bit better option. Now, both of them, as you get to the midfoot, are also really, really good. And the forefoot in both these is just a little bit stiff. These both have these EVA plates that I'll talk about in just a second, or film is probably the word that they use, that transfers through. So again, fairly stiff. I will say there's not a ton of toe spring, which is really nice, just a little bit. But if you have some toe mobility issues, these might be some good gradual shoes that are just a little stiffer without being super rigid with full-on plates that may help you transition a little bit through the forefoot. Now, when we're talking about stability, these really diverge. But first, I want to talk about what makes these unique from other stability shoes. First of all, what New Balance is advertising is an EVA film, which has cutouts through it that kind of travel more on the lateral side on both these, which is supposed to help guide you away from going too far medial if you do pronate more than you are able to control. Pronation meaning rolling inwards, okay? That's not a bad motion, just some people need a little bit help controlling how much they do. Now, that film provides a very mild, almost in my opinion, very mild amount of guidance. I wouldn't call it stability, I'd call it guidance as you're transitioning through. And to be honest, I haven't really noticed that. What I have noticed is the wedge design of stability. So you'll notice if you look on the medial side, there's two different foams here. There's a top foam and a bottom foam. The top is obviously a little bit softer, the bottom's a little firmer. If you look especially on the heel and the midfoot on both these, you'll notice that there's higher material on that bottom side compared to the lateral side. What that creates is a wedge. A post, which is a lot of stability shoes previously, was just had a harder piece of material on the medial side, so that when you compressed the foam and rolled in, it just created some resistance to that motion. A wedge is different because it's actually wedged up on the medial side, which is what both these are for. Now, this is really great for people that maybe have some structural issues where they don't just collapse in, they collapse in because maybe their forefoot is elevated a little bit. Maybe the position of their calcaneus or their heel bone is positioned in a way that just naturally makes them collapse inwards. So the wedge actually brings the ground up to that elevated part of their foot. So instead of just falling in, they have something to fall into that's actually already up meeting them. So the ground, it's bringing the ground up to meet them rather than having to fall into it. So it's actually really nice. The amount of that is very different between each shoe. So you'll see in the Vongo, there's just a little bit of a difference, and it's mostly in the heel and midfoot, which is actually how this feels. The Vongo really feels like the mild stability version of the two of these shoes. I really didn't notice it that much when I was first putting miles on these, which I was kind of disappointed because version 5 was much more aggressive. But those of you that have very mild stability needs that just need a little bit, and maybe a neutral shoe isn't enough, but a more moderate stability is too much, the Vongo is going to be a great option for you because it provides that just mild amount in the heel and the midfoot. The 860 is the way more aggressive one of these. When I put this on, I immediately noticed I was getting pushed outwards, which for me was good. It was a little much at first. I had to break these in. But again, it's full length. So you'll notice, again, forefoot, midfoot, heel, lots more of that material on the medial versus the lateral side. So if you have any lateral ankle stability issues, the 860 is not going to be an issue for you. If you have any medial stability issues, this is actually going to be really, really, really good because it, again, full length is going to be providing stability throughout the length of this in the 860. It's the more aggressive, moderate to higher stability shoe of the two of these. And a lot of moderate to high stability shoes are pretty rare because most things are kind of going in that like stable neutral realm. So if you have more aggressive stability needs on the medial side, the 860 is going to be better. If you just have really mild ones, the Vongo is going to be the better option. Both these, though, if you have any lateral ankle instabilities, if you tend to go out laterally, do not get into one of these. These are probably not going to be a good option for you, but I've been wrong before. There are certain people that, even though they move a certain way, respond better in certain shoes. Most people ever with lateral stuff, not going to be shoes for you. Now, upper, another area where these things really differentiate. The Vongo version 6 is the more narrow of the two of these. They both have a little lower volume, but the Vongo really sits much more snug. And I found that, again, some people with narrow feet are gonna like this. I didn't like it as much because I tend to have a normal width foot that's a little bit sensitive, whereas the 860 is the one that fits much wider, but a tiny bit short. The upper has broken in with some miles, but if you need a little bit more width, the 860 is going to be a little better. If you want a little bit snug and a little bit thicker upper, definitely a little bit warmer too, the Vongo is going to be the better option for you. And if you are someone who needs a stiff heel counter, these both are fairly stiff. If you're sensitive to that, just be aware that might bug you a little bit. I haven't had too much issue because they are very rounded, but I do notice them quite a bit. So again, in summary, those people that need mild medial stability that's going to guide them laterally in the heel and the midfoot, that have a narrow width foot and probably want a little thicker upper, the Vongo is going to be the better of the two shoes for you. Whereas if you have a little bit wider foot, if you need more aggressive stability from the heel all the way through the forefoot, the 860 is going to be the better option for you. Both of them are solid shoes. I'm really impressed with the 860. This is probably getting in line with my stability shoe of the year because of how they're designing this and the fact that it creates such a unique option for people on the market that's very different from others. I'm really enjoying it. Again, neither one of these is the fastest, but I'm super curious to know, what do you think of what I'm talking about? Do you agree or disagree with me? Have you tried the Vongo? Have you tried the X60? Have you tried the previous versions? What do you think of the transition? I'm really curious to know what you think. And as always, I hope this helps you make good decisions.